Yeah, well, I received those words of affirmation. I'm one, and it's taken a while, but I step into work that I do as my whole self, and being authentic, and that's something it took me. I had to push through some obstacles, some challenges to get to that point, but that's how I show up best, and that's how we all show up. So, looking forward to having this conversation.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect segue into kind of our kickoff every time, which is this thing called Cape U. Essentially, it's one thing about your younger self, one thing you like about your culture, or something unique about me. We're going to twist it this month and probably going forward is you can either share one on all three of those or pick one that speaks to you and tell a story. I'll go first. I'm going to just tell a story about one. And this is something, it's kind of one thing about my younger self, but it might also kind of fit culture. But when I was younger, I was out playing at in a neighborhood that was predominantly white out in Oklahoma. It was in Edmond, very very small, kind of not small town, but kind of suburb of the city. And I was out there playing with all of my friends who happened to be white, obviously in a white neighborhood, playing around the pool house. And I remember, someone obviously must not have liked how we were playing. We were playing tag, being kids, being rambunctious, and running over this community pool house. And they called the cops. And so the cops, they roll up. We're running. We're playing freeze tag, I think, of all things. And we hear over the cops, right? We keep running because we don't think they're here for us. We're kids. We're playing. Haven't done anything wrong. And they say, "Get over here," right? Gets over here. Long story short, the cop is very angry, right? And as a kid, I didn't really understand it. I had not actually had the whole talk as to as of yet, because I'm sure you know what that talk is around police forces. So I got very nervous and I wasn't quite ready. As soon as he asked for it for my birthday and for my name and address, which I'm dyslexic, I always have really trouble remembering those things. But as soon as I paused, he yelled at me, "Boy, you think about lying to me," and ended up throwing me in the back of the cop car for no reason. I think at the time I might have been 12 or 14. Um, Tears are rolling down my face. I was really lucky that my parents happened to be driving down the pool house. They were actually about to go watch a movie with my sister. They pulled over and were able to get me out of the cop car and take me back to the house. And that's actually when I had that first conversation, that talk with my father about what my interactions with the police forces would be like. And I think the one thing that has always stuck with me of all of that was one of my best friends. His name was Crispy. He was a really big guy. I was a running back on the football team. Always have a soft spot in my heart for the big dudes on the offensive line. That's who he was. He was a big guy on the offensive line. He came to the door, and we didn't have to say anything because he was already crying. There was tears in his eyes, and he just hugged me, and we just hugged and we cried, and we were just two boys who, in that moment, understood that life would be different for me, and he had a lot of empathy and compassion. And so, to answer the question, I think that's one thing that I really like about my country. I think the South is something that is a whole separate conversation, but to me, I think that empathy that just happens as human beings when we have that empathy, that understanding for our friends, oftentimes it can change our perspectives and outlooks. So that's one thing of my Cape U exercise. And with that, I will hand it over to you. If you need a refresher on what those three things after me talking your ear off, I can go ahead and do that as well.
No, thank you for sharing your story. And you've said a word which, frankly, is my north star, which is
Mm,
empathy,
mm,
and it's actually tattooed on my chest, a literal north star. Empathy is my north star, and I know, I'm confident that I have such high empathy, is because of the experiences that I've had. I'm the literal sum of my experiences, just as are you. So, thinking about this challenge, I guess a story I'll tell, about my younger self. So I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. What's interesting is that, especially when I talk to other people of color, black and brown folk, they're like, "There's black people in Boston." Yeah, yeah.
mm.
There's black people in Boston for sure. Specifically, I'm from Dorchester, Massachusetts, and like any inner city, there are many challenges. Especially for the community I was raised in, and communities like the one that I was raised in. Um, I can go two directions, but I'm going to give insight to the community I was raised in, the challenges that were there. So let me tell two quick ones. All right.
Yeah.
So when I was young, when people would ask me what I wanted to be, I would actually say police officer or fireman. And
Interesting.
the reasons why is because I had exposure to those professions. I had multiple uncles and aunts that were police officers, and then I had a an uncle that was a fireman. And I'll tell
Gotcha.
a story in regards to firemen really quick. Um, I used to always see my uncle's truck, engine 23, on my street, right? And like to me, that was awesome. You hear the fire truck, you see the smoke down the street. I see engine 23 because his engine was the closest to my house, and I'm looking for Uncle Keith. And I felt cool because that's gonna bring people outside, and I get to point and say, "There's my uncle." That was I didn't realize until probably 12 years old or so that the reason why I would always see my uncle's truck on my street was because the houses that kept catching fire on my street were crack houses, right?
Mm.
So I didn't even know that. I just knew that, oh man, it's cool as hell. My uncle's truck. Woo, I hear the alarm. I'm outside. I'm looking for Uncle Keith, right? Um, that's the environment that I grew up in. And you don't know as a child. Again, we're the literal sum of our experiences. And I'm just so fortunate that I had the parents, I had the family that I had that was intentional to give me exposure to dream beyond what I saw on the day to day. So that's a quick story in regards to why I wanted to be a fireman initially. I'm gonna give you another quick story in regards to how I learned to protect myself, but also just another vehicle that kept me uh, you know, out of those traditional traps that are in communities like where I was raised. So I was also a black belt in Taekwondo growing up, and I won the Junior Olympics when I was
Whoa.
12, a gold medal in sparring and forms, and also back to back. I won it when I was 13 as well. And
Wow.
the only reason why I took martial arts, again, I had a cousin, actually the son of one of those police officers who excelled in Taekwondo as well. And I joined the New Vision Taekwondo school, which was actually just, a youth pastor that so happened to be a black belt in multiple uh, uh, forms of martial arts. He taught us inner city kids taekwondo really to keep us off the street,
Wow.
because when I think about it, once we all got older and stopped practicing, the amount of my peers that either died or got locked up that were in that same school with me. So I'm really just elevating. What was dope is traveling up and down the East Coast, you know, um, knocking heads off, literally, in all these tournaments. And when we walk in, we were always like the only all black school or all black martial arts school walking in, and there was always whispers and all that stuff. And there's a bunch of inner city kids. They especially, I got in a little trouble sometimes, but they got in a lot of trouble when we were amongst ourselves. Got disciplined all the time, got scolded. Just a lot of you know growing and learning and fun moments, frankly, growing up. But whenever we stepped into these spaces, I would the fact that our sensei, our youth pastor as well, would always make sure to tell us afterwards, the praise that everybody was giving us, because we would leave with the most gold medals, the most trophies, but everybody was just always so impressed and shocked at how well behaved we were in those spaces. And again, that's just because of the leadership and the instruction that we got, and the discipline we got along the way. But the way that we would show up in these spaces, kick ass, take names, but also everybody speak highly of us. We ended up getting a caption in Taekwondo magazine back then too. So I
There you
say
go.
all that to say, just to give you insight to uh, really the interventions, the access to programming, the exposure to professions beyond, again, what I saw every day, just the exposure, what was informing and shaping me, frankly, protecting me, putting me on a different trajectory to end up where I am today.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's amazing, and definitely something that I think I just really relate to empathy being your North Star. I think that is uh, very true of me as well. I think the empathy thing is crucial, and for anybody who really is trying to do this work, I think that is incredibly important. I
Yeah.
think there's a unique intersection here as well. Is tell me how your empathy led you to dream.org. Like what was this career journey of how you ended up of dream.org, and what's the mission of dream.org? Like wrap this up for us.
Yeah. So just to say one comment in regards specifically to empathy, again, it's because I grew up in it, and I know it was exposure that enabled me to dream. I had access to build on those dreams. Um, I had space to fail forward as a young black boy, space to lead eventually as a black man, and affirmation all throughout the process of my development to believe in myself. That's the only reason why I ascended and ended up at a dream.org. And what empathy what empathy allows, I'm going back to that word space. Like I'm just meeting you, and we're vibing right now, right? But even if we weren't vibing and the response or the conversation was going a different way, because of because I know that we're all just the literal sum of our experiences, that empathy pushes me to pause before I react. It pushes me to pause.
Mm,
It pushes me to reflect, and frankly, just understand that however or the reason why what came out your mouth came out that way has been informed by some experiences that you've had, not necessarily my experiences. And it just gives me so much control, and an unshakable commitment for people that come from communities like mine. I know there's been your life experience may have been filled with trauma. I know you've had challenges, and I can see or hear beyond what's in front of me right now. Right. So I just wanted to say that real quick in regards to empathy. Um, and I spoke about what now are my development principles, but
mhm,
that is how I that is what changed the trajectory of my life. So in terms of how I got here, right? I'm from a inner city. My parents put me in a program when I was 7 years old, where I bused to school through a program called the Metco. In the Metco, Boston, some of the Boston is known to be racist, and right, it's
mhm,
different. It's the North. It's a different type of racism. It's systemic, right? And if you Google right now, the wealth disparity regarding black and white folk in the city of Boston. Let's just say the average wealth in a or income or wealth in a white household is over 200,000, like $250,000. The average net worth of a black household is $8. I'm not
mhm,
making that up, right? We don't. There's no ownership in that city. We don't own anything. So I bring that up, right? I'm speaking of systemic racism and some of the images that you see regarding Boston. Boston was also very became famous. I just use that word infamous, right, for
mhm,
the busing riots, right? Um, and as I think and look at my life, wow, I'm a child of the busing riots. I was in a busing program that was birthed in 1974.
yeah,
That's when MECO was formed, which was on the back end of those busing riots. But there was this need to get these kids like myself, access to better education. So went to school an hour away. One of a few black kids had the word, excuse my language, nigger spray painted or in marker on my locker.
mhm,
I had all those experiences, but at the same time, I had access now to better resources. And a lot of people saw the good and saw great in me. And those words of affirmation along the way, the space to be a leader amongst kids, and later on, all of that, it seeds were planted. And the dichotomy between where I lived and what I saw going to school, and me at an early age realizing, dang, the kids in my neighborhood, their experience is different than mine. Or realizing later on, like, dang, I got more, like, and I'll tell you about my dad because it all connects, right? But just realizing I had more, and I just had a lot of questions. I'm a how, why kid. Like, why is my life different? Why, even though I live here, I'm hearing the same gunshots. I'm seeing, like, but it's different here, and why is that? So I know that school, that intervention, educational intervention, out the gate changed the trajectory of my life. Fast forward, I moved from Boston to Georgia when I'm 16, and I go from that city to now I'm in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, and I am frankly surrounded by affluent black people. You know what I'm saying? Like people who now I'm seeing black ownership. I'm seeing, just the culture. It's different. It feels safe down here. Don't get it twisted. There's unsafe areas in every corner market, but it just felt different. I didn't have to ask my parents to wear my good jacket outside. I didn't have to, I didn't have to do
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? So